The world that we're going to explore in the film, it's not our past per se, it's kind of a parallel universe.
The period of time that we're in, which is not defined, is something of an amalgam of the 1930s and 40s.
Between First and Second World War.
So a lot of our influences come from using some elements of World War I, trying to get a lot of design elements that would be indicative of that period and those war machines that are very angular, riveted.
It's as if Industrial Revolution had allowed to progress for hundreds of years, so we never really got past that steam power, that Industrial Revolution sensibility and design sensibility.
There's a very, very strong derivation of Europe, post-war Europe in the movie. So that you have this clock tower and these strange clocks and these strange architectural features.
But also with a sort of futuristic bent on it. You know, oftentimes if you look back during that time period, and even earlier than that, some of the designs for the future have a sort of antiquated look now, and I think that's what it looks like. It's almost like a future of perspective from the 1920s or 30s.
If you look below the surface, or just what you first see, there are things in the world that certainly didn't exist then. Specifically, 9 makes a light staff with a light bulb, and the power for the light bulb is a battery. The battery looks like it comes out of a digital watch from 1975.
It's more mythology, even though it's science fiction, because it goes in a direction that we never went in. It's also sort of a reflection. It's looking back on the past. And so for me, I thought it was a good aesthetic to make a sort of a modern fairy tale, a very cautionary tale to what could have been one of our futures had we gone down that path.
The environment that you're immediately placed in is that of a world that has been completely destroyed. So you see touches of things, elements of Western civilization that used to be there. You know, you see tanks, power lines, things of that nature, to give you a sense that, okay, we're on Earth. So it gives you something to kind of grasp onto.
It's certainly a world of death where nothing lives, not even bacteria. There was the war, and the machines rampaged against the humans, and their chemical weapons basically destroyed any living thing. And that's why the ragdolls managed to survive, because they were impervious to the poison.
One of the key elements for our film is the perspective from the dolls. It's a low angle, so it gives us a lot more dynamic shots.
So you're seeing everything, that we recognize from our world in a sort of microscopic way.
Rusty, hacked together, shoddy pile of
Even in this sort of destruction resides a lot of beauty. Beauty in rust, the design of a bolt or a nut or a screw, or destroyed buildings, timbers that are fallen down or broken or burned or ripped apart. What appears to be junk and born out of violence, but very beautiful.
It's like Francis Bacon meets The Lord of the Rings meets Tim Burton meets Kashmir.
That doesn't make any sense.
There's a really unique sense of design that's not modern, it's retro. And then with all the pieces of garbage and dust and rubble, it feels like some kind of Art Deco created from ashes and junk.
It's a junkyard, but it's like a beautiful junkyard. The richness and the beauty comes out of the age and withering, and that everything, and I do mean everything, has a story to it. Like if you look at a board in the background, it's laid up against the building and has a burn mark which suggests that it blew out of this window and landed in this particular way. The posters that are up are suggestive of the revolt that happened. The break in the wall that you see in the beginning actually is a spot where the creatures broke in and destroyed the city. The wasteland was a forest, so it has dead trees in it. That's all that history that you don't necessarily literally hit the audience over the head with, but that sort of ties all that stuff together and gives it sort of meaning.
It's too dark. It's a dark, mysterious world.
I don't look on it as dark. I look on it as a mystery.
A lot of moments in the movie are very dark. So we had to still make a difference between, like, let's say, the ruined city environment, which is dark and ghostly and cold, versus the factory environment, which is still dark, but which is more toxic environment. So we went for slightly greener colors and kind of yellowish, and something that makes you feel uneasy. And you have the cathedral, which is also very gothic and dark, but in a very different way. We tried to put a little more of a majestic aspect in it, playing a lot with sun rays and the light coming through the clouds or the windows.
We're trying to use dynamic lighting and lighting that really controls the viewer.
Quite moody, dark. It's almost got a sinister feel to it.
You generally don't do a film quite so dark with so many blacks in it. and you don't usually crush your palette so much or so uniformly throughout the whole thing. But when you start to see it, it actually works because the parts where you do have the bright color, the green of the soul extraction and the red of the eye, they become really important and really special.
I get into fights with Christoph, our art director, about it sometimes because I'm trying to get the performances across, so you work really hard on getting subtle performance and trying to get the expressions to read and the poses to read, and then they throw it in a shadow with a dust cloud and a giant red light, so you can't see any of that. And so my instinct is to no, make that character visible, make them pop. But the truth is that when you look at the film as a whole, you need the dark, quiet moment, or you push those characters back so that they have someplace to go. If they come out of the darkness, then the light is that much more powerful. Or even if the light's weak, suddenly it means a lot.
Even though it's kind of a creepy and dark movie, there's still a certain beauty to it, and it's all in the way that it's just sort of shot. Even though I know it's supposed to be frightening, it's still appealing to look at.
If you know where to look, these ruins are full of riches.
The art department here at STARS is fantastic. They've done a great job with the color.
It's very earthy, earth tones, something that you don't usually see in CG animation. Everything seems really bright and cheery and very, very clean and sort of simple. And I really want to give a real grit and a texture.
It's not bright like in your face colors. It's just beautiful, a beautiful mixture of colors with sunsets and the orange afternoon light.
The palette is very narrow, and yet there's a lot of color in that palette. A bit of really dense red rust in a totally gray landscape, or this gray-green light, or the amazing red light from the fabrication machine in this black charcoal gray factory. Pretty amazing stuff. Very controlled. You have to be very controlled to create that sort of lightscape or colorscape.
Saturation is definitely another element that we used, like in the winged beast sequence. We played kind of a lower saturation palette at the beginning with warms and cool colors, and then we move from that into the whole chase on the roof, and we get into redder colors as the action intensifies.
It's very painterly in a lot of ways. It's not photorealistic, but it's almost as if our characters exist in this painted landscape, as if they're walking through an old painting.
I wouldn't really want to be a sock puppet in a post-apocalyptic world, would you?
No.
No.
All of the characters in 9, the humanoid characters and the creature characters, are constructed of a lot of objects that we would recognize, like skeletal parts of animals and humans, zippers, nuts, bolts, that sort of thing.
So much thought. The details. Carved wood. Molded copper.
When you've got real things, real items, telescope lens, little fisheye hook, and a little crossbow made out of paper clips, it stirs up our imagination, so it's challenging as well as inspirational too.
They're just little burlap sacks with eyes and mouths and legs and arms, and they run around getting into all kinds of trouble.
The beauty, I think, of the design, of Shane's design, is that each of the characters, as the numerical order grows, so from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, 8 to 9, each one becomes a little bit more finessed as the person who created them got better at designing them and sort of improved upon each one as he went along.
The first one that the scientists created would be the most rudimentary, would be the most crude. The hands are simple metal plates that are attached together, the feet the same way. As the scientists kept creating these creatures, they would evolve. Their design would get more complex, more refined.
The actual animation of these creatures, these ragdolls, is what really struck me.
I saw them as huge challenges. Mainly because of their faces. You and I have eyebrows and eyes and a nose and a mouth that's very expressive, and their faces don't really have that. Their faces are very limited as to what they can show, and that was a real struggle to try and make these characters look believable and full of emotion and life.
One of the biggest challenges probably would have been the eyes.
They're sort of camera lenses with an aperture in them.
They're in these deep eye cans, so getting expression from them, especially when you have a side view or a 3/4 view, is fairly challenging.
If he, she needs to look around, you have to sort of push them a little bit more because it's sort of like a horse wearing blinders, right?
One of the things that I loved about, Nightmare was, having the main character have no eyeballs and something, trying to give that an emotional quality.
You have to bring the expression out using the rest of the features of the face and the position of the body.
I think that in order to make an engaging film, you have to have good villains.
A lot of times, monsters in movies, there's so many things going on that it doesn't have a singular, strong image, you know? It's either a bunch of tentacles or something that, you know, but these monsters have a lot going on and yet have a strength of imagery.
The genesis for a lot of the creatures stems back from ancient mythology. The winged beast can be seen as a kind of a dragon. It's a modern interpretation. The seamstress, the way that she lures her prey in and hypnotizes them, is almost like a reinterpretation of the Medusa, or maybe a siren from Greek mythology. And then the fabrication machine can be seen as a type of cyclops.
The thing with creatures is we don't really have a base of you know, that's the way a creature moves. We can't go out and shoot it. So you look at things that are similar. Like for the winged beast, you know, you look at eagles.
The seamstress was a challenge all on her own. We used Cobra reference to get her movement correct in her body and to really show that steady head and the predatory attitude.
The ideas behind the cat beast was it was two creatures in one. It was a cat and a monkey, and so we had ape reference and we had lion reference.
Our big bad is the fabrication machine. It's like a giant hanging spider robot creature, but there's a personality there. We played him really broad. I kept pulling in reference to old Vincent Price and like Christopher Lee Hammer horror films, things like that.
That's the beautiful thing about animation, is so much of it is just made up, and you can run wild.
The thing that binds the characters, the creatures, and the world together is that they're all rising up from what's left behind. And so that is something that we use to kind of connect everything.
There's been lots of post-apocalyptic films, so it's not a new sort of genre, but I just felt that the way that this was approached just came at it from a slightly different viewpoint.
I just find it incredibly unique, and I think it's really beautiful.
You did it.
This is totally the kind of project I would have loved to work on my entire career. It's almost entirely acting. It's just performance. We're telling the story through the performance of these characters.
The on-screen acting, that's principally our real job.
You know, and we encourage the animators to perform as much as possible.
In some ways, it's not entirely unlike live action, where we get our initial cues, of course, from the director and the animation director. But then very, very often what we'll do is most of the animators have mirrors at their desk to watch their facial expressions.
They'll take a mirror and put it at their desk, and they'll just, as they're animating, they'll look at themselves
and you take a look at yourself and you see how you're slowly, you know, saying words. Like you say hello, and you would look at each letter and get an idea for what might be the right shape for that shot.
If the dialogue performance is really strong, and we've got some really nice performances in this, there's usually a hook, something for the animator to sort of grab onto and sort of design the performance around that.
So the animators will often use video reference that we captured with the voice actors to get not only the lip sync, but also to get a lot of subtleties of performance. Here is Christopher Plummer playing as one. And a lot of the gestures and the kind of subtle things that they do while they're giving their performance can be used to inform the animator as they go forward in creating the realism and the kind of texture that we want out of these characters in the 3D performance.
Let's go. Follow me.
But if you have no dialogue at all, then it's up to the animator to come up with the performance entirely. I mean, he is the actor in the scene.
The tendency with computer graphic stuff is that it can move stiff like robots. And to create any flexibility in the body is a layer upon a layer upon a layer of acting.
Especially in 3D animation, sometimes a single held pose doesn't read as a hold, it reads as a dead character or as a CG puppet.
If we have a problem with them doing a specific move or action, we can always shoot live action reference.
Why don't you two act it out? So do you want to be, you can be 9?
And that way we can get something like believable movement.
Sometimes it actually makes your job easier. If you're just doing a shot of somebody stepping up or sitting down, you can just get it on video reference, do a little performance and get it there. So we do that. A couple of us will sort of stage stuff, we'll work out problems, we'll find a performance, and then we'll record it so we have a reference. So maybe Charlie, can you come be our scientist here for a sec?
I get up and act things out or do live action references.
We did a lot of reference on this film. You know, I did do a lot of it myself because I secretly want to be an actress.
And as you're doing the performance over and over again, just like any actor doing a rehearsal, you start understanding the nuances and inflections, and things will just start occurring naturally that you wouldn't have just thought of. So you really need to feel the performance in your own body and muscle memory in order to, imbue it on an imaginary character.
Go back to the source. Every little piece helps to create this performance. It's grabbing little bits and inject a little bit of personality or acting to help the picture along.
Cool. Is that good? You get that?
Yeah. We might take a look at ourselves, what we were doing, how we were doing it, even subtle little ways of shifting our body from side to side as we were talking, and we use that quite a lot for our work.
Because there's lots of these little things that you don't ever think about. Things in the face, little gestures that you do, even just the way the weight of the staff is enhanced.
And what's great about these sort of mocked up props that we have is they have a kind of a realistic weight to them. So in addition to kind of getting the posing that you want, you also are getting a feedback about the weight of these objects and how they would actually feel in the hands of our characters if they were wielding this against various mechanical opponents.
So you get this on camera and you can kind of study it later. We'll look at this sort of live action reference to find the little quiet moments. And also, again, it's discovery. We may think we know something, but it's always your memory. And when you actually do reference, you study real life, it's just inspiring.
I sent him to scout.
Yeah, quote and emphasize the dialogue.
I sent him to scout.
And then when you sit down to animate it, you're not just copying the live action reference, you're analyzing it, breaking it down, and then finding a version of that works on our characters.
Because you can't actually copy it into the character, you have to interpret it and figure out how you can get that movement into the time frame that we have and moving like the personality of the character.
So we'll try to use it to sort of inspire the animators to just be thoughtful about what they're doing. So not just sitting down and moving keys around on a computer, but they're thinking about the performance and the story. It's got weight in it.
Enough.
Animators are the actors, but they're never seen. Well, no one in animation is seen for the most part.
Except here.
Exactly. So thank you.
I thought of the short, it's about 6 years or so ago. I had this idea for doing this stop motion film, and I had that rolling around for about a couple years until it came time for me to do my thesis film at UCLA. And that's when I took on the challenge of doing the film and to learning 3D animation production as well.
I was in graduate school at the same time that Shane was there, and the mantra of the program actually is one person, one film. So the goal is to get you to do a short film, and you are the storyboarder, you're the writer, you're the director, you're the animator, you're the modeler, the lighter, everything. You do the whole thing, and you can have help here and there, but for the most part you do the entire film yourself, and that's what Shane did.
He spent 4 years making the short, and it was his college thesis, so I was totally blown away by that. The fact that he had to keep buying new equipment pieces, and I think that's partly why it took so long. He didn't have the best equipment in the world, as I can't imagine he would at college.
I made a little splash for the short, and I started going out and meeting lots of people and looking at different projects.
My assistant said, there's this short film, 9, that you need to see, you should watch this movie. And I watched it, and at the end my jaw was just on the floor, I knew it, I just knew it right then.
I was sent the short, and I just was absolutely knocked out by it.
I have 2 kids, and I watched it with my kids, and they were mad for it. They thought it was the coolest thing that they had seen.
Just the concept of these rag dolls in this post-apocalyptic world, it was so interesting.
The genesis for 9 was the characters. Were these little burlap characters that were scavengers that would go around and collect bits and pieces of this world. They were sort of a primitive culture that was developing. That's what was kind of driving the ideas behind the short. It was to be a sort of showpiece as a director, but I just fell in love with the world and the characters as I was going, and I got really ambitious about the project.
It was nominated an Oscar.
It was nominated for an Academy Award, which was pretty crazy. It goes without saying, if you get an Academy Award nomination, it's going to change your life. It's allowed some doors to open that allow more opportunities and for me to express myself as an artist, and I think that's a wonderful gift.
You realize that the short is sort of like 10 minutes in this myth.
It was a teaser. It was a great teaser. It hooks me, and it was really interesting for me to hear the end of the story, to understand what's happened before and what will happen after.
I had just worked with Tim Burton on Corpse Bride. I wrote Corpse Bride, and I also worked on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with him. And so Tim was curious to see if this could be a full-length feature.
Well, I felt very clear when I saw the short that I, wanted to be involved. And just having a background in animation, I felt that could help support Shane.
Tim Burton has always taken animation in new directions. His design aesthetic is a part of the storytelling, I think. It's a part of the world making, and that's something that I am striving to do as well.
I felt very close to what he was doing in certain kind of character design and certain, trying to tell a story in a different way that felt, very close to me.
I was really excited for Shane that he was going to be given that chance to flesh it out and flesh out the characters and sort of delve deeper into that world.
When this opportunity came up to develop 9 as a feature, I already had all these ideas broiling around in my head for what I would want to do to show more of that world.
Some things in this world are better left where they lie. But if you know where to look, these ruins are full of riches.
The biggest challenge, by and large, is story. There was a mythology that was set up in the short that I didn't spend a whole lot of time explaining. Taking all that into the feature, well, then the issue became, well, where do these creatures come from? Like, what is the larger picture? What is the larger story? We had to depart from the short. And the last thing I wanted to do was to spend another 3 years redoing what I had done before. But I think what's good is we really bring the story back to 9. We really focus on that. He gets a much larger emotional journey and arc. And we focus all the stuff around the talisman now, which was, I guess, focuses and sort of Tim's big note. And we actually simplify things. Which is always seems like it's going in the right direction.
I love collaborating with people who think as visually as Shane does, who have just these wonderful, amazing ideas.
I'm the kind of guy that'll just throw everything in there, including the kitchen sink, and we did that, and then she really helped us sift through all that stuff and fit all these kind of crazy ideas together.
I encouraged him to say everything, Shane, free associate, just say it, and I'll pull out the stuff that's really, really great, that resonates with the rest of the movie.
I think she did very good at helping kind of flesh out the characters, and she and Shane worked quite a lot at taking some of the weirder elements and grounding them a little bit so that, we can understand what's going on, understand the characters' emotions.
You have to look at how many times you have them saying each other's names. It's a little too much. So if you're going to have it before, where he goes, 2!
Yeah, then we take it out here.
You can't have it here, too.
Yeah, we'll just keep it where we need it.
You might also have frozen silence. This is the first time you've seen the souls being sucked out.
Just horror. Yeah, just the horror, right.
So we spent pretty much a summer, and then we just put up these huge boards, and we kind of just would put together, we would have a whole board that showed the characters as we were developing them, and then we had a whole board that showed the major story points as we had certain ideas about where we wanted the story to begin and where we wanted it to end, and then gradually we began to fill that in until we had a whole outline.
So much thought. The details. You can't speak. Well now, surely we can fix that.
We found it very difficult to try to tell some of the larger story points and some of the larger emotions that are happening without dialogue. Of course, the short was silent. It was based more on the visual storytelling and pantomime. We wanted it to have as little dialogue as possible.
Tim Burton liked the idea that they wouldn't talk.
Just playing it all, like great silent movie acting.
Timur liked the idea that they would talk. Shane, he was open to let's talk about it.
I think initially there was maybe a concern that you're gonna have this weird world and then you just have voices and it's just like a normal animated film. But, it became apparent that it wasn't gonna be an ordinary animated film.
Can I wait here?
I think it certainly could have worked without dialogue. It's interesting, the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie is without dialogue, and I really like that. It almost endears you to the characters more. You're experiencing something with them and being able to pick up on things and nuances that they're not then speaking for you. But having the dialogue, I think, is kind of important, particularly in being able to articulate the past and give a sense of context. Not to mention the fact that I think it also helps to identify the characters.
We actually see 9 ragdolls now, and we wanted to give them each very distinct personalities. They're different facets of one soul, of one individual. So once we start pairing voices with the ragdolls, it brings a whole new richness to the characters and to the world.
This was the first thing we built together.
We could still go after him.
Us? But he could be anywhere out there.
We wanted the actors to speak in their own voice and to really become the characters of the film. And a part of doing that, we wanted to open it up and allow sort of creativity and allow the characters to be developed with the actors as well. But you've had a vision in there, and so that causes you to hesitate, that you think that there's something greater here.
Significance
There's
to
some
that.
Exactly, and that this could be a key in helping you figure out what that thing is and what it's going to do.
I think it was really exciting for me to work with someone that not only was directing the piece, but was the one who created it and was also doing animation on the film and incredibly hands-on in that regard.
Luckily, of course, I was working with the autocrat, the fellow who wrote it. Even if the lines were seemingly abstract, ultimately you could get to the true understanding of the psychology behind it, and that's what you need.
Go back to the source.
It's a sign of a good director.
It's just a dream come true. I mean, the opportunity that I have to work with some of these actors is just incredible. And you move back as he sort of winds himself up and falls down.
How long has it been since Stu has... We were basically on the same page. We talked the same language. Wait, I'm a friend. This is smashing! Smashing!
7? I don't believe it! He was really lovely to work with. He made it very comfortable. I had never done it before, so...
That's good. Let's try another one. It's a little softer, I think.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't stay trapped in that tower any longer.
Sometimes you'll hear a voice and it's just a voice, and I think that's what I was worried about. But each one, they somehow saw what that character was and became it, and that to me is not like celebrity voicing. They're actors doing real characters. I think it enhanced the sort of mystery of the story, helped ground it into some humanity.
I could tell that it was somebody that had really slaved over his first film, and when somebody makes a film like that, you can tell they kind of know all the aspects.
I don't understand how any of this works, how it's fascinating to me. But I thought it was really, I mean, he really is an artist, Shane, It's really beautiful, beautiful visuals.
Shane's wonderful. Shane is incredibly enthusiastic. There's a sense of youthful innocence to Shane, I think. It's his first time directing anything, and it's also his own short that he's bringing to life and expounding on.
It was really hard because as an independent animator filmmaker, I was responsible for everything. And so I realized I wasn't good at everything, but you hammered your way through it and you figured out a process and you were, hands-on touching every little piece of the film. And then going on to the feature, my first instinct naturally would be to try to control everything or to be the one who is touching and manipulating everything. And you can't do that. I mean, you'll burn yourself out and it's just impossible.
Coming from animation, I know that people that are locked up in a room for 4 years by themselves can sometimes, have trouble with not criticism, but other people's thoughts or ideas. But I always felt he was very open.
How's it going? When you're doing the animation, you're so close to it, and you're looking at it, literally dividing a second into 24 little bits, and you're worried about what happens in those little bits. And so sometimes it's hard to back up and get that distance, that critical distance from the work. And I find now, working with the team, there's always people around to bounce ideas off of and to see it in new ways.
He's very collaborative, and I really like that.
He'll come right over to your cube and we'll discuss a sequence. And he's so open to different ideas and different ways of viewing things.
Some of the best ideas have come out once we've got the film up and we've shown it to the crew, and we can all sit in a room and really talk about what's going on. But they sort of have the promise of humanity. What are they going to do with this new world as it comes back?
Perhaps it could move the rain to the end instead of where it is. I find that the rain where it is now doesn't have as much importance as if we put it at the end, you know, because then you're still showing that the earth is going through cycles.
It's kind of still kind of melancholy because they're almost kind of like the earth is crying for them, I guess, when the soul's released.
Coming onto this, you know, it took me a while to learn, you know, the differences between the short, because so many more characters and so much more going on, so much bigger, so much more epic. So I really had to get inside of his head.
It's banking like this, and it'll wipe us like that. Yeah, we'll see its belly.
We'll just hook it up in the pose, and then the fact that it's crossing the middle line in the next shot makes the hookup. So you've got this big camera turnaround anyway, which means that we know where the space is, we know where the characters are.
It's more about kind of teaching and managing people to think in the way that you're thinking so that they can start to solve the problems and figure out those things autonomously.
I really appreciate the creativity that Shane's brought to this. His vision is incredibly clear.
He also knows some of the limitations, so he's structured the production to ensure that he gets the most up on screen.
Shane's really challenged me to be a better filmmaker, I think.
Greetings, 9. It had such promise, my great machine.
Oh, I've learned a tremendous amount. You know, and it's a process. You don't just go right from script to have the final thing. It's always constantly evolving, and we're learning the characters as we go too. And it's really interesting to see, because once people kind of get it, then we can all really participate in what's the strongest thing? What can we do here that can really help support the story or the world that we're trying to create?
You did it.
No, I didn't. Not yet.
It's been incredible. I mean, he is the real deal, and he's understood the process, even for someone who hadn't done it before.
It's Shane. It's him. It's a whole movie, but it's him. That's why it's interesting.
Well, Shane knows his world. He is the scientist. He is the creator.
I think they're all facets of me in some way. I'm the crazy artist like 6. Sometimes I want to be really brash and idealistic.
What are you waiting for?
And fiercely independent like 7.
Keep up!
And then sometimes I know what the right thing is to do like 9, and I know that is going to be a long, hard journey. This thing is so big and so complex, you can't possibly think of it all. It's really not my film anymore, it's really our film. I really feel like it's been a real tremendous collaborative effort.
What happens next?
I'm not sure exactly, but this world is ours now.